Welcome to the Data, AI, and Everything podcast, where we delve deep into the evolving world of data science and artificial intelligence. In each episode, we engage with leading experts and visionaries who are at the forefront of transforming the landscape of data and AI. Join us as we unravel the complexities and envision the future through the experiences and insights of our distinguished guest.
Hello, everyone, to Data, AI, and Everything. Now, I am really pleased to have Ruth joining me today. And Ruth, good morning.
Good morning, David. How are you?
I am absolutely excellent. And actually, I was really looking forward to this little chat, particularly because he said to me, David, what the heck? So actually, I really, and I'm genuinely curious to ask you a couple of things that I would love to know. I don't think I've actually ever asked you these. And I just have to say this because I'm both terrified as well as borderline excited because my nature. I want to talk about women, but obviously not in the sense that hopefully can be canceled, but I really want to talk about women. And you, correct me if I'm wrong, 7 years ago now? Is it 7?
Connected Women.
What was that moment where 7 years ago you started the seed and created of what is essentially Connected Women? And what is Connected Women?
You know, I was a British Filipina whose mother was an overseas Filipino worker that went to the UK in the 70s and became a domestic help. And in her young mind, she thinks, why are we sending our mothers out so they can send money back home? Why don't we create opportunities for women in the Philippines? Yeah, and then I met her in 2017 and we formed Connected Women because she said, this is my vision for women, but we don't really understand the Philippine market. But I said, how can I help? When you ask that question, you can either get into trouble or you get yourself into something really exciting like this. Yeah.
But you said actually there's two elements there, which are, I think it's going to be important to understand I guess maybe the culture, the economy, the approach is. You were saying there you have women which are mothers, many of them leaving the Philippines to take up employment overseas. And in fact, I was talking to someone the other day who was saying that one of the biggest exports of Philippines across the entire board is really people. So having this as something that's really almost like a mode. And to be fair, look, many countries have done it. Many countries still do it. It just shifts in terms of the nature of the occupation, the nature of the industry. I mean, now we have Connected Women, whereby it's effectively and predominantly, correct me if I'm wrong, on the tech side of the space, data, AI, really giving the opportunity and the need from, be it, data classification, labeling, all the way to empowering these women with access to training, skill sets, qualification, and so forth. So when was this set up? I mean, what's the idea to really end up and being, in a way, a proxy or in the data space or the tech? Or like you said, when you said that question of how do I help, did it organically fall into that?
So when we started as a job matching platform, where it's like a dating site to match a virtual assistant with an entrepreneur, but eventually we realized there's a bigger problem, which would be the underprivileged, the ones that are normally left behind. And so we thought, how can we simplify jobs through technology and make it more inclusive for women? So this is what happened. In 2020, the onset of the pandemic, UN Women asked this question: how can we help women cope with this pandemic? And that's when we launched the Elevate IDA program. IDA stands for Artificial Intelligence Data Annotation. We named it after a woman, obviously. But the UN Women was a catalyst to make this happen, right? And within a month, they were able to fund about 40 to 60 women to be trained. Today, we have more than 1,000 women trained in artificial intelligence, and they're able to label data. They're able to. A fisherman's wife in Palawan is our star data annotator, someone that can clean your data, and she has no background in tech. This shows you how inclusive it is, right?
But Ruth, okay, this is wonderful to unpack. And by the way, just a little side story. I also previously was an MAS, Monetary Authority of Singapore. I had a grant program which was to elevate data and AI in Singapore, excuse me. And same thing, I called it ADA. So just a little point of reference there. Also the love of opera. You said two elements there. One is in terms of providing access to people, women, who previously were, again, let's call it spade, excluded, not just included. How do you approach that? And that kind of really leads to that second element. And you started talking about of a fisherman's wife. So how did that process begin? And maybe just a caveat then, and this is what I find really fascinating about this, because a lot of times you see the world of the need that supports AI. Again, I want to go back to, it starts with the foundations of, you need to have data. You need to have data quality. You need to have data governance. You need to have labeling. And in fact, I had several conversations about this already. And a lot of times it's looked at as frowned upon. Oh, you're getting farming out to low-paid employments to get this done. But actually, if you take this in a different lens and realize that actually this is a mechanism to provide employment, number one, but then not stop there. And actually, that's one of the reasons I also don't really like the word financial inclusion, and something we spoke about a lot. I don't like the term financial inclusion because, okay, once I've included you, then what? It's about financial prosperity. It's about employment prosperity. It's step one, yes, inclusion. Step two is how to create that growth. And that's something that you've also started. But again, I just want to go back in that step of creating that inclusion, and then to that story of the fisherman's wife. And you said like you're the star employee in a way.
Yeah. So you're right. We can't do this alone. I think it's all hands on deck. If you're trying and change the world and make it a little better for others, so you need to partner and collaboration with private sector, government, and to train women in IDA, you need to have someone that will be there to support the training. And we have a lot of private sector companies that have partnered with us, the Aboitiz Foundation, Shell, Smart, SM, Supermoms, all of those big companies that has the intention of helping. Those are our partners. So now, I'm not an expert in data, but I think most of the people know that for a machine to learn one object, it needs millions and millions of data. No, who's going to do that? So we provide the human in the loop. So this is IDA. IDA is the one that will train the machine to do things. So you don't have to be rocket science. In fact, we're saying that it's so easy to get into this program that you don't need to have a degree in IT. You can be a housewife, a retired overseas Filipino worker, retired teacher, disabled person, those things, right? They are able we're able to train them and they're able to work. So the business model for Connected Women is that we're a specialized business process outsourcing, wherein there is a continuous work for the ladies that are trained based on their availability, based on their skills, and there's a constant upskilling, right? So it doesn't stop in training and then what? We provide them that opportunity to choose to have jobs. So it opens their mind as well that Meta said, or Facebook said, that there are more than 70 million people on social media in the Philippines. So we want to leverage on that. The entry level is, the question we ask is, can you do Facebook? Can you do YouTube and all that? If the answer is yes, that's an entry point for them. And then they're slowly being upskilled so that the pay that they're getting is getting better and better.
No, absolutely. So where is it now? You alluded to 1,000, but how many are now on board?
So these women are, so we really need to have more projects for Connected Women, for the women to work on. Sometimes we work with Aboitiz Data Innovation so that the ladies can have some continuous work. And when we partner with private companies, we are able to provide like work for them internally. What we want, our dream is that there's a constant work wherein they're the ones that will say no to it. So right now, we're about 40-50% of our ladies trained are working in some form of projects, but we still need, it's the, like we talked about it, it's the early stage and people are still trying to figure it out. But for us, if it's a repetitive task, if you need your data to be clean, for you to be more efficient, then call Connected Women. No, we have thousands of women there.
No, that, like I said earlier, the ability and providing that opportunity. So I want to actually very much in the same topic, but take a slightly different shape, and maybe borderline controversial, especially with the model that you're approaching. But what's been you and the others' views with what I'm sure you've heard the discussion, or discourse perhaps is the right term, about the whole world of AI and how it's, some are saying. I personally don't subscribe to that view, but some are saying that it's going to destroy all these jobs. So on the one hand, you are creating these opportunities for a wide diversity of women to effectively have the choice of employment, to have the choice of training and education, the skill set, excuse me. But then you have this kind of, this, again, debate, discussion of, but AI is going to destroy all these jobs. What's your views about that? And are you seeing that on the ground? Is it creating a bit of that dissonance to a certain extent?
When we had the AI summit in the Philippines a few months back, that was last year, for 2 days, people were talking about, is the machine going to replace humans? And towards the end of that event, on the second day, we showed a video of the Elevate IDA, wherein women from far-flung areas of the Philippines talk about the opportunities that was given to them, and how it has changed the way they live and how they see things, and that opportunity to earn a living, and that gives them back their dignity. I think answered the question that not really. AI is not going to replace jobs. AI will create new jobs. For example, these women they go from zero income to 600 pesos a day, for example.
Yeah.
So it's really, for them, it makes a difference, right? People will say that's only about $10, $12. When you go from nothing to $12 a day, you are able to and for me, it's always about giving dignity back to them, right?
Absolutely.
Instead of just waiting for help from other people, then they're able to.
That old time saying of, give a fish to a man, you feed them for a day, you teach them how to fish, they can, at least they have the opportunity to have food continuously. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm interested that you're seeing one thing on the ground. You've created, not just created a business effectively, or the whole underlying model, but one with a noble and a difficult task. Inclusion, with the importance of getting it done, is always difficult. It's creating a shift, it's creating a change, it's identifying that opportunity. So it's fascinating to me because on the one hand, obviously don't undermine the views and the people saying, look, it's going to have such an impact to jobs. And it's a very vocal voice. In fact, recently, there's even down to the point of kind of saying that you should ban the use of AI in certain scenarios in terms from an employment point of view. But yet you have this on the other side, like you said, the creation of jobs. And not only just any job, it's creation of a very impactful. And I wonder about that kind of, what is that view and kind of what that's perspective that's driving it, given that you're saying, hey, guys, it's making a difference to us. And you said something earlier there, which I think is really important. You're putting the human in the loop. You're putting the person in that underlying process. So maybe is that the way we, when I say we, obviously the royal we collectively, should be also thinking about not just AI, technology, digitalization, because let's call it space. This is the trend to the future, that we need to consciously think of the human in the loop and not as a byproduct, perhaps.
This is the fourth industrial revolution. The third industrial revolution, when machines came, people were so scared to be replaced, right? But you still see 100 years on, you still have people working in factories. They're now managing the machines. So I think it's very similar. It's no different. And I'm a CEO of an energy company. And I feel that this AI is a tool that we can use to make better decisions. When you have proper data, then you can make a more precise, better decision, and shouldn't be scared. And I think people that are scared of AI will not benefit from it, because those that will pick that up will be miles ahead.
Yeah, I always to give the analogy of change, and again, this is a personal one, of riding roller coasters. So obviously, different people have different that. I personally love roller coasters, but it has a multi-phase approach. When I in the queue to the roller coaster, I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? It's really, I should go. Then when I sit down, that strap comes on, I'm just like, this is a mistake. It goes off. And that split instant, you're like, this is the best thing ever. And when it stops, you're like, really? It's already over? So that's how I equate change. That's how I sometimes explain to people who can get, it's an emotional experience as well. So what's next for kind of specifically connected women and others in terms of driving this underlying change? Because Philippines is a big place. It's, I think now, what, 135, give or take, million people, massive diverse demographics. But then also beyond that, if you look at the rest of Southeast Asia, there's relevance and this kind of applicability from the immediate next one is Indonesia with 15,000 islands and whatnot. So from your kind of perspective, someone that kind of been a core element in how can I help? What's your thoughts? How do we ultimately make this difference? How do we drive this inclusivity that we keep on driving for and advocating?
Like I say, it's a whole society approach, government and etc. We have recently signed a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Interior and Local Government, which supports the Elevate IDA for all the local government units in the Philippines. This is also supported by the Philippine Commission on Women and also the Aboitiz Foundation. So private sector, government, women agency, you need to have the right component to make it succeed, because
The right ingredients.
Yes. Otherwise, it's difficult. It's difficult already as it is, but I think when you do it together, then you can get it far as possible.
But is that or was that, if it can, depending on which part you look at it, I guess the biggest challenge really? Okay, not to undermine it, but sometimes I say that the most difficult problem actually has the most elegant and simple solution. Is it really that? Is that the challenge of simply getting people to work together? Well, what was your biggest challenge in terms of driving it? Because I would argue that obviously, while there are many more that can be brought into this, like you said, to the program, there are many more opportunities for work. You have thousands of women. That is no small feat. But what was those challenges in growing it, in getting to this momentum?
So we are a for-profit company, and really, it's the try to make it work, sustain your business, for example, is the most difficult for us. You have to pay people to do things. We have employed several women and men to make this happen. So I think the most difficult is really, because we are a startup problem, is what we have. And we're multi-awarded. We've gone this far. We've done so much. If someone will come and say, we'd like to help you help women in the Philippines in tech, then that will make our lives a lot easier, because we have to hire people to look for clients and all that. So startup problem, we're no different from that. So that is for us, is the biggest challenge. But I think we're getting there slowly, which shouldn't be, right? So if someone's listening there and is interested to talk to us.
I was about to say, if you look around the world, we're seeing tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, which are being put into pre-existing as well as new AI-related companies, which is, I mean, don't get me wrong, absolutely great. Hurrah. Perhaps, though, it's an eye-opening moment to the remembering that it's not just that shiny, successful opportunities and startups and AI developments on top, but it's also the very needed requirements to fuel that. So perhaps not in the hundreds of millions, which would be, though, nice, but still think. But so definitely calling that out. But interestingly, you said you're for profit. Now that's fascinating, because I think the vast majorities of largely similar type of initiatives that I've spoken to have not been. What kind of drove I'm just curious, what kind of drove the different approach, essentially?
So we know we have a business case. And for us 7 million Filipino women are out of the workforce. We cannot just rely on grants, partnership, etc. You need to have a business to sustain it and scale it, David.
Yeah.
So this is why we are not an NGO. We are not, but we are a social enterprise. And we are for profit mainly because of sustainability and scalability of what we're trying to do.
But you see, that brings us all the way back to one of the first points, that it's not just about inclusion. It's about sustainability. Again, and I know sustainability is a word that's been thrown around many times, and like you mentioned earlier, which I want to ask you about, basically run an energy company. But that's actually it. It's about, in the end of the day, that it's not a fly-by-night, that it has a continuation to a continuity,
Yes.
which is, I would argue, I'm happy to hear otherwise, it's actually, that is the most critical thing. It's not just proving a point, but it's proving the sustainability of it.
Yes.
Was that it essentially?
Yeah, it's always a challenge to sustain something. You can start, but how can you sustain it to the end and reach your goal? And in a magnitude we're in, it's changing the world. So that's what our goal is. That's what keeps us awake at night. And it's that.
Hey, that's all it needs to be. And at the end of the day, I remember when we've spoke about this in the part. So one of the things that I did many moons ago now is we're working on the principles, basically fair use of AI. I won't get into too much detail, but I like to remind this because it does come up every now and then. Is we used to have an additional principle, which was, it feels a bit silly saying it, but which was don't break the law. And we were just like, do we really need to say that? Shouldn't be like obvious as the sun rises from the east. And that's exactly the same thing to me. This drive, in whatever fashion, in whatever manner, and especially now, given that there's such almost think of it like awakening. There's a re-renaissance. I wouldn't say it's a renaissance. I'll say it's a re-renaissance of AI with respect to its impact to change. It's the realization that it's not mutually exclusive of inclusion and driving sustainability for all, or as many as want to come on board the bus effectively. So I fully agree with you. And so so I asked you about, in terms of the elements of that again, on the surface, contradictory view about, oh no, AI is destroying jobs. They say, actually, no, it's actually it's even creating new opportunities. So let's even double click on it to a certain extent and specifically go to Gen AI, which is like even more so, oh, you don't need a human at all effective. Is that's the case? What's been your experience with respect to that?
What do you mean, like ChatGPT and?
Yeah. So is that resulting now in the case whereby even more so, maybe there isn't that need for that foundational work, the labeling? Is it taking away jobs? Like I said, let's just go to the heart of it. Is it taking away jobs?
Well, it's probably taking away some jobs, but it's creating new jobs. Who's heard of prompt engineering before?
Now everyone has.
Right? That's just one. And I think, yeah, it shouldn't be a threat. We've had the work done. We're training a chatbot. I think it's with ADI. We're training the chatbot to understand different dialects in the Philippines. You can train it in English, but can you train it in Ilonggo, Cebuano, so that sort of thing. So that we train more than 1,000 women, but Connected Women is really a big community of women, about 150,000 women that shares, connect, work, and learn with one another. So it's very diversified, and it's all over the Philippines. It's even in Singapore where it started, actually, and it's all over.
You just said something that it really created an aha moment for me. Beyond the, wow, by the way, 150,000 women community, that's phenomenal. But you were giving a listing of the different, and I think there's like hundreds of them, Filipino dialects, and then of course you've got the hybrids of them, the Taglish and so forth. But you said something that kind of made me realize is, I think a lot of times these views of gonna destroy jobs, is very binary. A, it's very binary. And B, it's very binary. I don't think deliberately or obviously with any malintent, but it's also because we're looking at the lens of a dominant majority. Let's call it that. For example, look, where was Gen AI really adopted and created to a certain extent? It was English-speaking countries. And then you have that lens of English-speaking countries, it's going to take away these jobs. But then it's actually, wait, hold on a second. You have all of these thousands, actually, of specificities that general, however amazing thing doesn't directly apply, doesn't directly work. And actually creating those hundreds of, actually, if you go globally, it'll be hundreds of thousands. Look, like I said, just Philippines alone is hundreds of languages. I actually searched this online the other day because I was having a conversation. I realized that Tagalog is actually only within the Manila area.
Yes.
The moment you go a bit to the left, it's like it's a different language. And then if you go to, I'll use Indonesia, that's thousands of language. And India is renowned. Like I was joking with my Indian friends, like, why do you speak English with one another? I was like, oh, because it's easier. So when you go to that specificity, to that local context, that is actually the opportunity. That isn't the taking away. That's actually the adding in. That's the creation, right?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. But I also want to say it's been written in the newspaper recently about ethical outsourcing. And the Philippines is one that has been, so there's in the southern part of the Philippines, there's this sort of, I think, people doing data annotation, but it's in a very cramped room, like a sweatshop and all that.
I was about to ask you to maybe and by the way, I put me in that bucket. A lot did some other. What's an ethical outsourcing? Because I was immediately thinking of what's an unethical outsourcing.
Yeah, all this ESG, UN SDG compliance, etc.
Yeah.
Ethical outsourcing really is about making sure that the people that are working is in a good environment, they're paid, they're treated properly
with dignity.
And so if you put them in a sweatshop and you don't pay them on time, etc., so that sort of becomes unethical. But our tagline really is that we are ethical outsourcing. We're here. This is very personal to us, helping women and making sure that they get what is they've worked for and make sure they're treated properly and so all that. So anyone that wants to do ethical outsourcing, has ESG compliance to start with. You'd be surprised, David, that these women that are working on these projects are 98% accurate. So it's not, oh yeah, we'll just do this for charity. I remember there was a local company in the Philippines that sponsored to train women in the IDA program. And then so they said, okay, we'll give you some tasks to work on. It was so good. The first project was so good that they've 10x the next project. Just like that. Because you never know until you try. Just because you're doing something good doesn't mean you have poor quality. We can guarantee the quality because we manage the service.
But actually, and a bit of a side comment, excuse me. Actually it goes back to that estimate of or core value of sustainability. A lot of times people think of, and maybe this is what sometimes leads to the kind of the unethical outsourcing, is what is the cheapest we can get it for? What is the cheapest we can get it for? Like how do you cut costs? How do you cut costs? How do you cut costs? Now, that is a very short-term view. Again, don't get me wrong. I run a business. I've been in businesses. Obviously, cost is an important element. And of course, we're trying to optimize it. By the way, see, I prefer that word rather than cut costs. I prefer the term optimize costs. But it's also that mid to long-term view of if you go absolutely razor and cut, there's no sustainability. There's implication quality. There's people will go because people realize. Whereas when there's an opportunity to grow, where there's an opportunity to establish people's, again, actually happiness. I'm a big believer in happiness, by the way, in what they're doing, in their pride, in the quality of the outcome. You create that. You actually create that 10x. So it's then not just a question of cost. It's also a question of that impact and downstream of revenue. But like I said, there's still debates out there, and not debates, but questions of how do you create the link between the data efforts to the revenue outcome of a business, which is something which I actually think we need to get a lot better on. But separate aspect. On kind of circling back to sustainability, and I wanted to ask you this because you do have a phenomenally unique perspective, not just from the human. I don't want to say human capital, the human talent perspective, the creation of that opportunity. But like you said earlier, also energy. So sustainability impact also means from those different things. So in the world of energy, are you seeing, and I'm just curious, or maybe let me ask this differently, how are you seeing the impact of these kind of initiatives? And it doesn't have to just be AI, by the way, towards the sustainability goals or otherwise. And the reason I ask this is because And again, I'm not an energy person. We do work in energy, but we have energy experts, but I'm specifically not from the world of energy. So looking from the outside in, I'm seeing, which is important, all of these focus on green energy. But then I'm looking, and especially if I contextualize it back to the Philippines at the, so-called, not as green energy, I don't want to call it brown energy or whatever. And I go, if we switch that off today, the Philippines will go dark. That's just the reality. There will be no energy. So why isn't that, or maybe we are, and that's where I'm going with this, apply an equal amount of effort or time in leveraging on all this phenomenal array of technologies that we have to drive efficiency, optimization, improvement in the existing energy processes that we have, while we're concurrently increasing green energy. You see where I'm going? It's like energy optimization to a certain extent while driving green, because even if tomorrow you put solar panels everywhere in the Philippines, actually the vast majority of places you could put solar panels actually is fields. So it's the way a choice of either food or energy. So it becomes a bit of these very existential questions rather than, okay, I have a coal plant. Yes, it's polluted, but you know what? I have technology that can drive 20% efficiency and reduction of emissions. I can drive this much improvement and so forth, while concurrently looking for these green alternative forms. I really wanted to hear your perspective on this.
Yeah, sustainability, yes. I've been in the renewable energy space for more than 20 years. I've seen the industry grow, especially now with Secretary Lotilla and, of course, the ERC chair, Mona Di Malanta. Of course, you know her. They're driving the growth of renewable energy so that we'll have more sustainability. And also battery storage. It's a game changer, right? That will address the intermittency of solar, wind, all of this. And so I think we can rooftop solar. This is the low-hanging fruit. You're talking about competing with land, with food, etc. But look at if you're on a plane, look at the roofs in where we are. There's a lot of roofs that are not used. And my company has just built the largest rooftop solar in Batangas. It's about 14 hectares of roof, the largest single use for the Philippines. So imagine if all
roofs
of these companies that have big roofs will have part of their requirements addressed by solar, for example. That will address sustainability in a way, right?
So
yeah,
it's really then, you're reaffirming my views of, and actually going back to what we said earlier about actually AI and jobs and all that, we need to move away from binary thinking. We really need to away from this kind of linear perspective. Oh, no, this is what it is. It's just, I don't know what's the term. Think horizontally. You've got a roof, use it. You have a pollutant, see how you can optimize it. Rather than a one or the other. And it's a case of driving that kind of underlying agenda to, again, contextualize it. Because ironically, and again, this is personal view, our strengths come from our diversity, comes from our differences. We are different as people, as countries, as geographies, as cultures. So something that maybe is relevant and very applicable in a Northern European country or Southern European country or European, American or African, it'll be applicable in Southeast Asia or vice versa. So it's that point of view. And great to hear about the Batangas. That's a great opportunity. And you're right, when you fly in, you see a lot of roofs.
Yes, absolutely. And there's a lot of policy that's coming out from the Department of Energy that's driving that growth so that the restrictions are lifted and more roofs can be used.
I guess, and at a risk, because I call myself a pragmatically optimistic person. I would cautiously put you in the same bucket in that renewable energy, transformation, data and AI, inclusion, that we can do good.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
You don't have to do bad things so for me, even in our company, we were very conscious of diversity, making sure that women has equal chance than men. And because diversity in all of us makes good business sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always find it funny. And in fact, it's a conversation I have sometimes even internally with our own groups, whereby people have different views. And sometimes it'll result in, I call it healthy tension, discourse. I love that word, by the way. And sometimes people are like, I was like, no, but the fact that someone has a different view towards things than you is great. It gives you a different perspective. It's not even about agreeing or disagreeing. It's about a different opportunity. And that's ultimately, how do we innovate? That's how ultimately we identify these opportunities. Like, hey, you got roofs everywhere, just use them. That's suddenly saying you don't have to clear a field. You don't have to suddenly or concurrently invent the stuff that have high efficiency in terms of, like you said, in terms of the jobs. By realizing that, hey, there's actually a need for all this stuff. Let's just go and get it done. But and I really love the approach, if I swing back to Connected Women, and it's an interesting one of really taking it towards from a startup point of view. And maybe that's something that more engineers need to know, but again, contextually, need to transition to make sure that, unless it's literally just a one-hit wonder, like it literally needs to come, serve a purpose, and go away. It drives that sustainability because, and as jobs, employment, work is a extremely close to heart topic. Many years ago, I used to constantly hear it. I used to get so riled up. And I even commissioned a study across the whole industry to systematically view, is this going to impact people negatively? Because at the end of the day, the view I hold, while yes, technology can be used negatively, yes, there can be risk, yes, there can be challenges. In the end of the day, we're doing this for good. We're doing this for betterment. We're doing this to improve us. And it also means that we have that responsibility of identifying and I'll use your term, the ingredients to make it successful. So what's the future for Connected Women?
Before I answer that, I think you were saying that right now it's very dominant on the demographics that's probably white, male, whatever. So when I tried an AI app to say, I want to look like this, and I come out as a white person. I'm not even Asian. And AI we find is male. So the future we want is that we want to train women so that they're able, so AI can have a gender side of AI. Do you understand?
What was that term you used earlier when you're talking about it's providing the option.
Yes.
It's providing the option rather than having the option decided for you. And it was really funny because as you were talking about that, actually, I don't know if I ever told you this. I did one of those 23andMe's, Answers.com. I'm a mutt. I think that's the only way to describe it. I actually have, by the way, I really was shocked when I saw this. I have 10% Indian, Native American. So I was just thinking about that. And I realized that whatever AI that comes up for me will have to be very confused. But jokes aside, it's about choice ultimately. It's about having, just like we were discussing earlier, and why we create diverse teams. And again, we create diverse teams not for the sake of a color or the sake of a namesake. Again, to go there potentially. But it's truly to have diversity, meaning the difference of views, the difference of perspectives. That's actually the exact world that I think all of us should be hoping for, especially in the use of AI. Whether it's a search engine, you want to have the ability of diverse views, diverse of opinion. You don't want to, remember, this was actually a silent debate. Let me call it that, silent debate that happened some time ago. It always gives you the same thing, no matter who asks for it. So it eliminates the diversity of search. So the question is, how do you introduce that back in? So same thing, if you design an AI using a certain degree of data that's coming from a certain perspective, any perspective, how do you, at the very least, acknowledge that, look, I'm limited, that I'm not giving you a comprehensive perspective of you, or you actually now have the ability of saying, I want to create a series of AIs or a cohort of AIs, let's say, that equally capture that diversity for the choice as an option. Because we made, again, if I go back to a very, very simple example, we both go to the search thing. The search, remember, when you search something, you have 10 options, 5 options, whatever, none. They're all correct. But you choose this one, I choose a different one. Yeah. It's that ability that we can choose something that's more appropriate to us. It's not about right or wrong. And I think that's really what's important as we're creating that next generation, perhaps, or current generation of AI.
Totally.
So that's the future of Connected Women?
That's the future. And the future we see is that more and more women will be able to come out and say technology has changed my life. And so therefore, we have this sari store in the Philippines where when they see someone put a sari store, someone will put another one. And for us, it's for everyone to think that technology can be a game changer for them. And technology is also jobs.
Yeah, no, I feel uplifted. Ruth, I really want to say thank you so very much. And just to repeat that point is that the future ultimately is for us to create. It's really that. And there's these wonderful and immense opportunity and tools. And it is how we make this available to all. And it's to remember that we can make it available to all and in a non-difficult manner. Connected Woman is a wonderful example. And I will repeat that call out that anyone out there who wants to, be it from an investment perspective or be it from an opportunity, in realizing that it is creating jobs. And I want to emphasize that term. It is creating new jobs, creating those underlying opportunities. So Ruth, thank you so very much.
Thank you, David. So much fun.
And that's it. So it wasn't too bad, right?
Oh my God.
That wasn't too bad. That wasn't too bad. We were just having a chat. No, I always learn so much when we talk, and I really wish more people have this. It's actually weird me saying this, but having this humane perspective that you do.
Yeah. I think it's just a matter of time that someone actually pays attention and say, hey, let's talk to those people.
It should be I mean, okay, maybe I'm coming from I don't know what's the term, arrogant, privileged point of view, but it should be obvious. It shouldn't even be a case of, it should be obvious.
Yeah, but you're so good to make me comfortable there. I was like, shit, what's the answer?
Look, I didn't share this to you because rattling off is, you know how this all came about? We all get invited. You get invited to a ton of panels, and all that. And I remember this was back. So this is the Singapore Film Festival, and I was invited to a panel, which was great. I was on it. I was being controversial as usual. And then after the panel, I bumped into a good buddy of mine who was also on the panel. And we just started chatting, and we ended up on this conclusion of, hey, why didn't we have this conversation inside? This should have been the conversation, not what we discussed.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? To hell with it. I'm going to get all these people that either I know I enjoy talking to, or I want to talk to them, and I want to have those side conversations. I want to kick being politically correct out the door. I want to move aside all these things that I want to have, at least to me, if I can be selfish, a conversation that's important. And some of the stuff that we spoke about, I honestly don't think people talk about enough. The fact, and again, I honestly don't, like, a lot of people take it in a negative sense. Oh, you horrible colonialists, blah, blah, blah. No, I honestly don't think the vast majority of people are thinking of we are oppressing or we're dry. I don't. They're good people. But the reality is that they're creating technology. They're using technology in a way that's relevant to them. And they are thinking that it's relevant in the same way to others. They're not going, hold on a second, actually, is this even relevant to you? Is this used in the way that makes sense? Like, even think about governance. In the way, your topic of renewable energy, the way that Europe is pushing renewable energy in Southeast Asia. And again, I'm not an energy person, but I don't think the way it's done is right by EU, because it's right for EU.
Yes. Yeah, so it's very location specific, right? The natural resources that we have here might not be the natural resources there. But you're right. A podcast is really like eavesdropping on someone's conversation.
Exactly. So thank you, Ruth, for joining me on the roller coaster.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Data, AI, and Everything podcast. Make sure you visit our website at aboitizdatainnovation.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast and find our show notes. If you enjoyed listening, please share on your social channels as well.